Hi there, my name is Brittany Dieter, and I'm the vaccine educator here at the BC Centre for Disease Control. You are listening to the Biological Product Management webcasts, and this is number 4 of 5, dealing with surplus vaccine. Let's get started. So a couple of things we're going to talk about today are inventory management basics, tools you can use to manage your inventory, forecasting demand for vaccines. This is just some basic theoretical concerns based on birth cohorts and school enrollment. We'll look at harvesting vaccine back either to the health authority or back to the BC CDC pharmacy. And finally, talk briefly about the manufacturer credit system. With inventory management, you need to start by considering what you have on hand, what vaccines are in the fridge. For school programs, the basic consideration is ordering only the first dose in your series. It's always recommended that you do not stockpile vaccines for a number of reasons. One being that then if there happens to be a cold chain break for whatever reason, then we lose an excessive amount of vaccine that really shouldn't have been out in the field anyways. And you're reminded to review base orders quarterly and revise them as needed. And generally, the amount you want to order is your monthly base order minus the number of vaccines that you have on hand. That's the amount you want to order. If you keep those really tight, you keep tightly to that amount to order, then you're going to reduce excess, which is reducing wastage. To establish a base order, a couple of things you'd like to consider are age cohort. So how many children were born that year, or how many children are enrolled in that school year. The second would be the number of doses in routine programs. So that's, say, 2 doses of MMR versus 1 dose of varicella for a child between 12 and 18 months. Seasonal and program demands. So program generally, again, is just the number of clinics you have, the number of school clinics you will be having. And seasonal would include things like pneumococcal vaccine and influenza vaccine. And always you want to have a small buffer amount, which is your safety stock, and we'll talk about that in just a moment. It's important that you think about what the delivery schedule is for your office. Generally, it's weekly for large offices, bi-weekly for medium-sized offices, and monthly for smaller offices. And that delivery schedule would be for the refrigerated trucks or the reefer trucks. You want to order according to what that delivery schedule is. And of course, there's always some built-in lag time. So for example, you might need to order the Thursday before for a vaccine delivery that was happening the next Wednesday. Whatever the rule is would be something that your biological product consultant would have a good idea about. We talked about how to establish a base order already, and the new requisition form that I'm going to show you in just a moment will require inputting a base order and the number of doses on hand. And I can't emphasize to you enough the importance of talking about doses rather than units as a way to make sure that when we're talking about 100 tetanus vaccines, for example, we're actually all talking about 100 doses of tetanus rather than 100 boxes of 10 tetanus vaccines. You can see how that could easily lead to confusion and potential wastage. Inventory accounting is important for vaccine quality management. Proper inventory management generally means knowing the following things: what quantities of vaccines and diluents have been received, what quantities of vaccines and diluents have been administered, wasted, or spoiled, which vaccines and diluents are currently in stock, which vaccine and diluent vials should be used first, which vaccine and diluent vials are expired and must not be administered, how many vaccine and diluent vials are in excess supply and may be returned for possible credit or for reallocation or redistribution, and finally then you'll figure out which vaccines and diluents need to be ordered. The issue of how often you do counts is something that probably changes depending on which area you're in. That's something to talk about with your biological product consultant about. The importance of counting cannot be overstated. As I said here, the count is key and not just the count from Sesame Street. Next slide. This is an example of an inventory management tool that was used in Richmond from the Richmond Health Department, and I'd like to thank them for letting me use this in the presentation. This was a BC CDC inventory printout, I think, that was done obviously for May of 2009. You can see all of the things that we talked about. So they're talking about how many units they have on hand, that how many they're going to order, and then what their total monthly inventory in units is going to be. The difference you can see is that we're all hopefully going to be moving to doses because that's much more clear than units. Though in this particular sheet, they've done a great job of adding what is a unit right here. All right, next slide. Using a minimum maximum inventory control system can help managers or biological products monitors prevent overstocking, which can lead to higher wastage, or shortages and stockouts of vaccines and other immunization supplies. Obviously, stockouts or running out of a vaccine is also a big concern. Though surplus is what we're sort of focused on here. The minimum stock level is the level below which stocks should never drop. So vaccine stocks should never drop without having placed an order. It's the amount of stock you will use in the time between placing and receiving an order, plus the reserve or safety stock that's kept for emergencies and unanticipated demand or delivery delays. So you can see here we have the reorder level, we have our minimum stock level. The reorder level allows us to have that sort of safety barrier that accounts for the time between placing an order and getting the vaccine. And finally, we have our safety stock level. The safety stock level prevents those unanticipated shortages, or if there happens to be a weather delay that prevents your truck from getting there exactly when you think it might be. The maximum stock level is set to guard against oversupply, which results in losing vaccines to expiration before they can be used. It consists of the minimum stock level plus the amount of stock which is normally used between orders. A minimum maximum system makes sure that the amount of quantity on hand is always established between those levels. Minimum and maximum levels are expressed in the number of months of supply, or it can be weeks of supply rather than the actual quantity. So that minimum stock level might be 4 weeks, your safety stock level might be 3 weeks, and your reorder level might be 1 week if it takes 1 week for the vaccine to get to you. In general, to find out quantities, you want to multiply the level given in months of supply by that product's average monthly consumption. So how many vaccines get used in a month, and then how many months of supply do we have on hand. The inventory control system, this is really just a theory. It's not necessarily what might be in use in your health authority, but just it's a really interesting way, I think, to visualize the amount of vaccine we want to be ordering, when we want to be ordering it, and how to avoid getting into a situation where you have too much or a situation where you don't have enough, both of which are obviously not ideal. Here we have the new biologicals order form. It was previously, I think, called the biologicals requisition form. This should be coming out, I believe, at the end of August. That's of 2010, and that's just a guesstimate. But you can see that we've gone from having units to having doses. So we're talking about what our base order is, and we talked about how we establish the base order. And you can see at the bottom of this form, if we could see the whole thing, the base order helps you, it gives you a little bit of an idea of how you should be determining that, or what that should be determined to be. The number of doses on hand is going to be determined obviously only by counting. That's the count is key. There's only one way to figure out how many you actually have. And that's going to give you your doses required. So your base order minus your doses on hand equals doses required. We just have our standard vaccines that are right here. It's recommended that you get this approved, and who will approve it will probably vary depending on what your specific health unit looks like or your health authority looks like. Probably your biological products consultant would be my guess, but I'm unsure about that. These are your standard vaccines that people would get quite often. You can see your school programs, your Gardasil is here, your hepatitis B infant, for example. And some non-standard vaccines are things just like the Menactra or the meningococcal polysaccharide. Not a lot of people will be getting these, and these have just been set down here, I think, largely to avoid any accidental ordering. If you think that you're ordering, inactivated polio, but you actually rated on the line for immune serum globulin, that could be a potential conflict or a potential problem. So when they're put down here, that just helps avoid, programmatic errors because people are, doing lots of other things often at the same time. And again, you just get a signature to approve it, and you're going to go ahead and either email it to the biologicals desk or fax it in, depending on what your process is. It's important also that you put your name and phone number so that if there are any questions, the biologicals desk can contact you and ask you, did you really mean to order 1,000 doses of immune serum globulin, for example, because last year you ordered none. So those kind of questions are things that obviously it's important that they talk to the actual person who filled out the form to get a full sense of that. So again, this is what this new form looks like. Biggest change really is just looking at doses rather than looking at units, which is what our previous practice was. If you have any questions about that, that's something that you would want to talk to your biological product consultant with. Also, when it comes out in the admin circ, I'm sure there will be some information also that will give you some background on why this was done. Finally, let's talk about the manufacturer credit system that we have in use in BC. Oh, sorry, while I'm at it, I'd actually just like to briefly go back to this section. Just to let you know as well, another reason that this was changed or was looked at again was as part of a process to get people ready for Panorama electronic ordering when that does come. So the idea, I think, was to have this look as much like Panorama as they could, so that when Panorama actually does come into place, it will be easy to make the switch over. It will avoid any errors at that point. So as part of purchasing incentives, so to get provinces to purchase their vaccine rather than someone else's, often manufacturer credits can be offered to the provinces by manufacturers. So they say, you think you might use 100 doses of influenza, but there's some potential that you might use up to 125. So why don't we offer you a 10% or 5%? The percentage obviously would vary wildly. We offer you a bit of a credit system so that if you do accidentally order, you can order at the higher end. If you do accidentally order too much, then we'll take that back and give you your money back. About 43% of the vaccine that we have returned in general to the BC Centre for Disease Control Pharmacy from the field is creditable by manufacturer. Sorry, and I was saying, credit rates are generally about 5%. My example of 10%, I think, was a little bit of perhaps wishful thinking. So the harvest is important because we do get money back from that, from the manufacturers, which is then used to go into vaccine program improvements. So I believe a couple of years ago, for example, the money was used to purchase new fridges for areas that were needing fridges or that had older fridges that weren't working as well. Other projects like that are potentially also could be funded. Also, the harvest is important to get the vaccine back to the BC Centre for Disease Control because we need to figure out what is the difference between the vaccine numbers that went out and what we have in IFIS, because often those numbers are wildly different. So it's hard to figure out, did some of those vaccines go to, did they get wasted? Did they go out to doctors and we never got forms back that were entered into IFIS? Or did we accidentally miss entering a huge pile of data for some reason? Or was the shipped vaccine numbers wrong? There's all sorts of things that can happen. And by getting vaccine harvested back, so pulled out of doctors' offices, back to the health unit, from the health unit back to the BC Centre for Disease Control, we can have a good sense of what wasn't used or what wasn't given, basically. And our last slide in this segment is pneumococcal polysaccharide. If you're looking at this slide, it's a product-specific contribution to the total value of returns. And Pneumo 23, you can see, is quite high at 6.9% there. You can see the little red box around it. It's a significantly less costly vaccine than Gardasil, around 1/10 of the cost, or Prevnar, which is another one that's on the left of it, so higher value, 1/7 of the cost of Prevnar, and 1/3 the cost of varicella. So we would expect that Pneumovax 23 would not contribute very much to the overall value of vaccines coming back. However, a lot of vaccine was returned due to expiry, and surplus, as opposed to cold chain breaks. And therefore, there's some potential that inventory management, things like forecasting and ordering, expiry dates, and reallocation need to be addressed with this particular vaccine. So a lot of that vaccine was returned because of because of surplus ordering and then expiry rather than cold chain breaks. And so it's one of those vaccines that it's great to keep an eye on if you can out in the field and just make sure that you're ordering that one really tightly. I would like to thank you very much for watching section 4 of 5, surplus of the biologicals product monitoring webcasts, or product management, pardon me, webcasts. Thank you very much. And again, I'm Brittany Dieter, and I will see you for our final section, which is expiry. Thank you.